A missile, constantly mistaken for a rocket. One destroys everything as you know it, and the other can take you far, far away. Lately I've been wanting to leave. Staying is no good. I want to get rid of everything, yet I'm praying for something that lasts forever. It's hard to explain. For the Rest of Your Life is a coming-of-age story. Through wistful vocals and indie rock instrumentals, ranging from gentle, catchy tunes to climactic emotional moments, Twikipedia expresses a journey of dependency, uncertainty, and most of all, a struggle with change. I loved this album as soon as I heard it. It reminded me a lot of Jane Remover's music. But I wanted to understand it more fully. While the lyrics may not seem to be the primary focus of the album, they're crucial to the overall feeling conveyed by these songs. And since it seemed like no one else had done an in-depth reading of this album's themes yet, I figured I'd give it a shot. As a disclaimer, I'm not very familiar with Twikipedia's other music, nor her personal life. All I know is that she's 20 years old, Brazilian, and started making music in 2020 as part of the teen hyperpop scene. I also don't want it to seem like I'm speculating or making claims about Miss Laura Day's actual personal life. I'm just looking at the narrative that is created by the lyrics on this album. Wikipedia uses a somewhat loose structure for the songs on For the Rest of Your Life. Many of them don't have repeating choruses. Different sections flow into each other, and each song feels like it ends in a different place from where it started, and yet the hooks are still pretty memorable. Her lyrics are mostly comprised of simple, vague statements about her emotional state and situations, combined with extensive metaphors and symbolism. All this gives the impression of Delta writing these songs as an outlet for the things she's feeling, a sort of venting into your notes app lyrical style. And I don't mean this as an insult. The confessional style fits perfectly with the atmosphere and themes of the album, reinforcing the narrator's vulnerable personality. Room for One, as the album's opener, introduces many of the concepts that will be present throughout, namely a relationship in which Delta feels pushed aside and mistreated, while the other person holds more power than her. She presents herself as fragile and uncertain, dealing with difficult decisions about where to go in life. She doesn't yet have the confidence to stand up for herself in this situation where she's being hurt by someone else. Garden gives us a little more insight into the specifics of Delta's situation. It begins by showing her dependency on this other person, introducing the use of houses and doors to symbolize people letting each other into their lives. In the chorus, the other person has now come to her house. The trampled garden represents how he's destroyed her happiness, delicate flowers that don't stand a chance against a lawnmower. He breaks down her door, invading her personal life to run to her for comfort. In the next few lines, we learn that Delta and the person she's talking about are former romantic partners who are clearly still very dependent on each other. Despite the fact that he has a new girlfriend, he's still using Delta for comfort, the same way he presumably did when they were still together. Delta, meanwhile, can't bring herself to cut things off with him completely, and seems to still care about him somewhat, so she allows him to cause her pain like this. Most of the other songs on this album will follow this relationship between Delta and an ex-partner who she keeps running back to, unable to truly break free to a place where she'd be happier. Cardboard Boxes continues the house symbolism while giving a bit more insight into her internal struggle. While it is about the same person as Garden, I actually think the song is also about the other main conflict this album deals with, Delta's relationship with her parents. The way they perceive her and what they expect of her does not align with the way she really is or the way she wants to be. She has a desire to break free and leave behind both her family and the boy who hurt her, but in both situations she can't bring herself to embrace such a dramatic change in her life. She stays with these people who don't value her, suppressing her true feelings in the process. The chorus revolves around imagery of someone moving out of a house, an archetypical example of change, throwing out the past and locking up the doors. I'm actually not entirely sure what this specifically symbolizes in the first chorus, but in the outro it's used to express Delta's desire to one day run away. Learn Yourself, like the previous song, could be about either a parent or a partner, and continues the themes of unhealthy relationships. First, the spoken sample in the beginning is from a Brazilian-Portuguese dub of Neon Genesis Evangelion, dialogue where a character is questioning their own identity and existence. The first verse explains the other person's destructive tendencies and how he tries to apologize but never really learns from his mistakes. She then describes feeling like she has to act like someone she's not. She knows it's hurting her to stay with this person, but she can't bring herself to leave because it's not all bad. In the second verse, imagery of fire and burning things down shows how she feels like leaving the situation she's in would destroy her whole life, or possibly feeling like the only way she could escape is through death. Figure Me Out explores how Delta continues to run back to her ex, feeling lost and uncertain without him. He has some realization about her that changes the way he sees her, although I'm not sure what this secret he figures out exactly is. The use of the word far to convey both emotional distance and chronological progression is reinforced here. I don't have quite as much to say about this one, but it's a very good song. Far Apart is a pivotal moment on the album. At the start, she's lonely and lost, still desiring to return to her former partner. She lays out the situation they're both in. Delta is suppressing herself, making herself smaller to go along with what the other person wants and allowing them to treat her poorly. But leaving, making such a change, would be more difficult than simply going along with the way things have been. So there's still a part of her that wants to try to repair the relationship. Meanwhile, the other person refuses to admit he's done anything wrong, to the point where trying to make it up to her would be much harder than giving up on her entirely. She wishes she could feel powerful and free like him. She's tired of always being under his control, feeling like he'll never change or become any better. He makes a comment on what she looks like, which will connect to her feelings about her appearance and her identity later on. Finally, she decides she doesn't want him coming any closer. The distance between them now is for her safety rather than something she fears. She's decided she needs space. Windchimes revolves around a metaphor of Delta being nothing but an animal killed carelessly by her ex-partner. She realizes how little he ever valued her, a feeling she had gotten used to before she took time away. First, she's another bug to squish, one of many people manipulated by him. Then she's roadkill, a deer in the headlights, knowing she's about to be hurt by him but frozen in place, unable to move to safety. Meanwhile, he's able to go on with his life without any lingering negative effects. A hit and run he can just forget about and leave behind. Boy continues the same theme of the difficulty of making the decision to cut someone out of your life. She still feels lost and uncertain as their relationship has become more distant and strained. Ultimately, she's struggling with change. He still doesn't care about her or what she's going through. The chorus further expresses her feelings and how hard this decision is and how she had hoped for the relationship to go well and for things to turn out differently. These feelings of attachment are still strong enough to be an equal force against all the harm she knows he poses to her. Paper Planes reflects on this relationship in retrospect. It calls back to the house metaphor, expressing her conflicting feelings over him and the way he manipulates her into staying. Her sense of identity is obscured and lost. She looks back on how she hoped he would change, thought he cared about her, expected things to go well. In reality, though, he didn't care about her feelings, and these lyrics suggest he may have even sexually abused her. The animal metaphors return, but this time she's not roadkill. She's a loyal dog or a mindless lab rat, tamed and domesticated, putting up with his abuse. The paper plane symbolizes their relationship as something that was doomed from the start, something she put her hope into but would never last. And yet she held onto that relationship even as it decayed and let it drag her down. Dry Your Eyes returns to many of the same themes as Garden, focusing on how it feels to be someone else's shoulder to cry on. Delta blames her own shortcomings for the pain she feels, while still harboring resentment for her partner. She allows him to use her for comfort because it makes her feel valued and lovable. She makes herself into an endless well of love for him despite the toll it's taking on her, because she doesn't think she'll be appreciated if she does anything less. She doesn't see herself as valuable or deserving of care, so she perpetuates this cycle even as it's destroying her. Seams brings together all the themes of identity, family, growing up, and pretending to be something you're not that have been hinted at in some of the earlier songs. It's clear that these ideas all relate to Delta being trans. She couldn't turn out the way her parents wanted her to, she's conflicted over her appearance, and she feels unlovable and is susceptible to being manipulated. The song begins with a metaphor of someone trying to, quote, fix Delta, stitch her back together the way they want, despite how much it's hurting her. She allows her identity to be controlled in this way, covering up her true self and acting obedient to placate him, though she knows she can't last that way forever. I think this makes the most sense in the context of her going back in the closet after her parents aren't accepting of her gender. When she suffers, when someone does see her true self and they don't accept her, she feels as though it's some divine punishment for not following the rules that were set for her. Despite how much it all hurts, she's reached a breaking point. She's running away from all the people who have kept her sealed shut all this time. And how could she possibly listen when they call for her to come back if they can't even use the right name for her as they do so? She's realized they will never truly accept her and she's done hiding. They aren't allowed back into her life, aren't allowed to control her anymore. She can finally drop the mask and be free. The second part of Seams reflects on how she never really fit in from the start. She could never have gone on living a lie or staying in a relationship built on pretending. Even if it seemed simpler back then, it was never going to last. In the final verse, she's still tempted by the idea of being stitched back together, living the life she thought she could have, because even in freedom, it still hurts. Even now that she's no longer controlled by these people, the effects of their abuse still linger, and living as her true self as a trans person can just be scary in general. Even so, she knows she can't go back into hiding like before. It isn't a true solution, and it won't be the same. Anyone But You explores further the idea of cutting her family out of her life and her feelings about her appearance. She wishes that growing up, transitioning, and becoming herself could be easier. She sees a familiar face in the mirror. I interpret this to mean she looks similar to a family member and wishes she could wash away that connection to her past. That being said, she's more confident now. She finally gets to be herself and won't listen to anyone telling her otherwise. Getting far away from the people who kept her down is finally something she embraces, packing up her cardboard boxes and moving out, running away, breaking free. She looks back on all the time she wasted, rotting away and fearing change. Her family can't reach her now. She won't let them try to control her life, even though she knows those connections run deep and are difficult to get rid of. She accepts that they'll never understand her and she doesn't need them anymore. Finally, she embraces change as something positive, something that's brought her out of the dark and into the light. I couldn't look into feliz as deeply as the other songs, since I don't speak Portuguese. However, the line that's repeated at the end of the chorus, very far from a happy ending, suggests that, despite where she is now, things aren't perfect. Like the end of Seems suggested, being alone can still be scary even when you know what's best for you, and healing from abusive relationships where you weren't truly valued could take a long time. Delta's journey is deeply emotional and relatable to a lot of people. Shaking up the status quo is scary. It can feel easier to just stay hidden, play the role you're expected to play, and stay with people who mistreat you because you're reliant on each other for comfort. But if you overcome your fear of distance and take some room to breathe, you'll be able to grow farther than those people would ever allow you to. And if you overcome your fear of change, you can make it to a better place. It won't be the same, and you might be alone, but it'll be worth it.